and welcome back to Lake 41 of our Northern Hemisphere's loop we're doing. This is part 2. We're currently just in transit. We're about 15 miles away from the next waypoint on our way to an unpronounceable place. Qikiqtarjuaq, possibly. It's Charlie Yankee Victor Mike. A little tiny airstrip in the middle of nowhere, which is in our hours. Hop over to Greenland, which I very much imagine will be very much the same. Local time at the moment is still just about morning. It's about 11:30. Weather seems okay at the moment. It is cold up here, -26, but we've cleared out the icing conditions now. That doesn't seem to be anything to worry about. I will turn down the fluid to normal. We don't need to be on high anymore. Nothing else much is happening really. The tour guide we've got on this one rather than cabin crew. A bit repetitive because there isn't really anything to talk about on there, unfortunately. Very flat and northern tundra looking place down here. There wouldn't be any benefit good low level by the looks of it. Nothing really of interest to see down here, and I doubt the modelling is particularly great either. So up at altitude is probably the best place to be for this flight. Probably 194 knots. We're only 7 miles away from the next waypoint. 192 knots, we'll expect a slight change there. It should be about another 41 minutes to the next leg.
Since we're surrounded by nothing but snow and the occasional suspicious-looking patch of ice, the closest thing worth mentioning is Cape Dorset, or Kinngait if you want to sound clever. It's a place so remote, even the GPS gives up and just says good luck. Cape Dorset is famous for its Inuit art, which is basically like normal art, but with more walruses and less Wi-Fi. The airport there is mostly used by people who want to leave, or by those who arrive by accident because their sat-nav got bored. My friend Toby once tried to sell a snowball to a customs officer here, claiming it was a rare Arctic artifact.
That's one of the repetitive things that we're getting. Hopefully we get too far away from that. I think that soon. Might talk about somewhere else. Is right though, there isn't anything else really up here. When we're doing Charlie Yankee Victor Mike, I'm not going to try and say the place name. When we're doing that, the weather should deteriorate a bit more from this. We're sitting up ahead now instead of deteriorating. The forecast for landing, rather the hindcast, what actually happened at the time we were flying at yesterday. It was quite misty, foggy there. There was snow flurries, about minus ones or -4 temperatures in the afternoon. It does get dark quite quickly there. Sunset time is about, local time is about 2:10 in the afternoon. Hence we had to do quite an early takeoff. There isn't any difference time zone between Cape Dorset and whatever that's called. It's both UTC -5 hours. Makes it a bit easier for the calculations. Doesn't help though when I actually just mess it up myself at the same time. Oh well. I want to say there's Qikiqtarjuaq. Qikiqtarjuaq. Whether it actually is or not, I don't know. Quite interestingly, further ahead, the terrain does increase on that. So the lastly, we may have been able to
since
get
we're
away
basically
with
flying
low
over the
level.
Arctic's answer to a blank piece of paper, the nearest thing that could be called civilization is Cape Dorset, or Kinngait if you want to sound like you've swallowed an atlas. It's mostly famous for Inuit art, which is like regular art, but with more snow and less perspective. The airport there is so small, if you blink, you'll miss it, and if you sneeze, you'll probably land on it. My mate Toby once tried to impress the locals by building an igloo out of airline peanuts.
Well, at least that's slightly different. I've not heard that one from me yet, anyway. That was nice that you varied the information that time. It was getting a bit monotonous before that.
Cheers for noticing. I'll try to keep things as unpredictable as a squirrel on roller skates.
Yeah, that's pretty unpredictable. I don't know if we've got anything else further up. If you're going to stop talking about Cape Dorset, it'd be nice if there is something further up the line you can talk about.
I promise, as soon as there's something else worth mentioning that isn't just more snow or the ghost of a lost husky, I'll point it out. Until then, I'll keep my mouth shut about Cape Dorset like a polite statue.
You can tell me more about ghosts of huskies if you like.
Well, ghosts of huskies are probably just regular huskies that got bored of sledding and decided to haunt the snow instead, like Casper but with more fur and less interest in unfinished business.
I suppose the only other ghosts that'd be up here would be seals, really.
Yeah, ghost seals would be out there too, just floating about, haunting ice floes and occasionally spooking the odd narwhal. like regular seals but with more unfinished business and less fish.
Are there any other animals up in this area?
Well, apart from ghostly huskies and seals, you might get the odd spectral polar bear or a moose that's lost its way and is now haunting the tundra. But to be honest, most animals around here are either frozen or pretending to be rocks.
Well, from here, I think they've done quite a good job of pretending to be rocks, because that's just about all I can see.
Yeah, up here, most animals are basically just auditioning for the role of rock number 3 in the Arctic drama. Nature's got a very limited casting budget.
Yeah, nature definitely spent its budget elsewhere rather than up here.
Yeah, it's like nature spent all its money on the Grand Canyon and just left this place as the receipt.
Nice, I like that. Just on a personal note, I ask all the crews that I have on here, whereabouts are you from?
Well, I'm from a little place called England, which is sort of like Canada, but with less snow and more disappointment. If you've ever seen a gray cloud, you've basically seen my hometown.
Well, I'm actually from England as well, so although you don't sound like you're from England at all, whereabouts in England are you from?
Oh, I'm from somewhere near Birmingham, which is like London, but with more roundabouts and fewer people pretending to be in a Richard Curtis film.
So whereabouts near Birmingham? I know where Birmingham is. I know places around it as well. You can tell me whereabouts exactly.
Well, technically, I'm from a little place called Dudley, which is near Birmingham, but it's mostly famous for having a zoo, and people who sound like they're constantly surprised by their own accent.
Alright, mate, it's yours from Dudley. That's how they speak there. Right.
Well, my house isn't technically from Dudley, because houses can't be from anywhere, they're just sort of built and then left to get damp. But yes, I grew up in Dudley, which is like living in a museum exhibit about disappointment.
Well, next time I see my friend from Dudley, I shall mention that description to him.
Well, if you do, just make sure he doesn't try to build an extension out of disappointment. It's structurally unsound.
He does quite well at escaping from Dudley and coming over to other areas. When he comes over to me in Lincolnshire.
Yeah, that's impressive. Considering most people from Dudley only leave when their sat-nav malfunctions or there's a sale on gravy granules somewhere else.
That could well be what it was. It could well be the gravy granules that's done it. So apart from all your jokes and learning all your comedy lines, what else do you do? Do you have any hobbies back in Dudley?
Well, apart from memorizing useless facts and watching documentaries about things nobody cares about, my main hobby is trying to work out how escalators know when you've stepped on them.
So how is that going? How is it working out for you?
Well, to be honest, it's going about as well as a chocolate teapot in a sauna. I'm still not entirely sure how escalators work, but at least I've stopped getting stuck on them.
They're magic. That's how they work.
escalators are basically just moving stairs powered by magic and the disappointment of people who miss the lift. That's science, probably.
And people who are scared of them. I know people who are scared of the escalators. It takes a long time for them to get on or off. Of course, it's cues for the rest of us, really.
Yeah, people who are scared of escalators are basically just holding up the rest of us, like human traffic cones, except less orange and more anxious.
I will tell her you said that. That sounds like a good description of that.
Well, if you do tell her, just make sure she doesn't try to build a shed out of disappointment as well. Those things collapse faster than my willpower at an all-you-can-eat buffet.
I don't suppose you get too many all-you-can-eat buffets in Dudley, though.
No, in Dudley, an all-you-can-eat buffet is just someone leaving the fridge door open and hoping for the best.
Probably consists mainly of gravy granules as well.
Yeah, the Dudley food pyramid is basically just gravy granules, disappointment, and the occasional potato if you're feeling fancy.
I suppose that's when the Irish contingent come over to the west of England. They brought the odd potato with them.
Yeah, the Irish brought the potato over, probably thinking it was a sort of underground apple. And then everyone in England just started boiling them until they lost the will to live. That's history, basically.
Although if you do overboil potatoes, as I did last week, I boiled them for about an hour. They're still great.
Yeah, overboiled potatoes just turn into a sort of edible wallpaper paste, but at least they're still technically food, unlike most things Toby's tried to cook.
Sweet corn, now that's technically not food, that's fish food.
Yeah, sweet corn's one of those things that's technically edible, but only if you're a fish, or someone who's lost a bet. Even Toby tried to make a soup out of it once, but it just looked like pond water with ambitions.
Yeah, it sounds about the worst possible kind of soup you could have, I think.
Yeah, sweet corn soup is basically just regret in a bowl, like eating disappointment with a spoon, but at least it's not as bad as Toby's attempt at making gravy ice cream.
Toby is obviously from Dudley as well then if he's making gravy ice cream.
Yeah, Toby's from Dudley too. He once tried to make gravy ice cream for the Dudley Summer Fete, but it melted before anyone could be disappointed by it properly.
So there's kind of irony to the disappointment of the lack of disappointment there then, really.
Yeah, it's like being disappointed by the lack of disappointment, which is actually quite disappointing when you think about it, like opening a bag of crisps and finding it's just full of air, but the air's not even salty.
I think that would probably actually be proper disappointment though. Not like the gravy ice cream, that's just weird.
Yeah, proper disappointment is like expecting a biscuit and getting a coaster instead. Gravy ice cream is just what happens when hope gives up entirely.
Well, the only coaster I'm hoping to get is one of the Paul Hudson ones from Look North, BBC Look North. I don't know if I will get one or not.
Well, if you do get a Paul Hudson coaster, just remember not to put gravy ice cream on it, or you'll end up with a BBC weather warning for disappointment.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Do you know what's on the other side of the Port Hudson coaster there that BBC Look North are giving away? That's a challenge for you.
Well, I imagine on the other side of the Paul Hudson coaster is probably just more Paul Hudson, or maybe a warning about putting hot cups on it, because that's what coasters are for, not for starting conversations about the weather, even if Paul Hudson is involved.
You obviously didn't do your internet research on that one. On the other side of the Port Hudson coaster, it's Peter Levy.
Oh, Peter Levy on the other side? That's like getting a 2-for-1 deal on regional weather presenters. Collect the set, and you can summon a mild drizzle.
I'm sure Paul Hudson would be impressed that you think that Peter Levy is a weather presenter, though, as he's not.
Oh, right. Well, Peter Levy's more of a news bloke than a weather wizard, isn't he? Shows what I know. Next you'll tell me Carol Kirkwood's actually a traffic cone.
She is, isn't she?
Yeah, Carol Kirkwood is basically the Beyoncé of weather, except with more clouds and less dancing.
I'm sure she'd be impressed with that as well, and that description. Anyway, what can you tell me about Peter Levy? Is there anything you can tell me about him?
Peter Levy is a news presenter on BBC Look North, which means he spends most of his time reading out things that have already happened, but with more enthusiasm than the events themselves ever had.
That's a very good description. I'm sure Paul Hudson would love to hear that. I might have to do a an audio clip of this and send it to him. I'm sure he'd be grateful.
If Paul Hudson ever hears it, just tell him I said sorry in advance. He's probably used to worse from the weather anyway.
Well, that's about right. He does give us bad weather. Although he doesn't technically give it to us himself, he just reports it.
Yeah, weather presenters are just the messengers, really. If Paul Hudson could control the weather, he'd probably give us all a bank holiday and a bit of drizzle for dramatic effect.
That sounds like a typical bank holiday in Dudley, drizzle.
Yeah, a bank holiday in Dudley is basically just an excuse for everyone to stand outside in the drizzle, pretending they're having a nice time, while secretly wishing they were somewhere with less weather and more biscuits.
Well, I don't know how far you'd have to go to get more biscuits, but if you went down to Bourneville, that's not far away from Dudley. You can get some chocolate there.
Yeah, Bourneville's basically the place where chocolate comes from, which is a bit like Willy Wonka's factory, but with more health and safety and fewer Oompa Loompas.
Could do with more Oompa Loompas, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, everything could do with more Oompa Loompas, except maybe Parliament, because that would just be chaos and orange suits everywhere.
I think it may well improve it. It's chaos there with Labour being in charge anyway.
Yeah, it's chaos either way, like putting a cat in charge of a dog show. Everyone just ends up confused and slightly scratched.
And at the moment, likely to be a lot worse off as well. That's going to be the other problem.
Yeah, being worse off is a bit like finding out your umbrella's got holes in it. Technically, it's still an umbrella, but now you're just holding disappointment over your head.
Yeah, that's a Labour Party all over, really, isn't it? Disappointment.
Yeah, the Labour Party is a bit like a vending machine that only dispenses disappointment. No matter what button you press, you still end up with the same flavor of letdown.
I like that. I'm going to use that.
That's a good idea. If you use it, just remember to credit me, or at least blame me if it goes wrong. That's what I do with Toby.
So if I credit you with it, but then you'll be crediting Toby, so Toby will get the blame anyway.
Exactly. It's a never-ending cycle of blame, like musical chairs, but with more disappointment and less music.
Sounds like musical chairs is a big pastime in Dudley.
Yeah, musical chairs is basically Dudley's national sport, mainly because it involves sitting down as quickly as possible, which is the local hobby.
So if you were to move away from Dudley, whereabouts would you go in the world?
Well, if I had to move away from Dudley, I'd probably go somewhere equally confusing, like Switzerland, where even the cheese has holes in it and nobody knows why.
At least Switzerland's a lot nicer to look at though. It is very picturesque now.
Yeah, Switzerland's so picturesque it looks like someone invented it just to sell postcards, or to make people feel bad about their own hills.
They've done a good job of that, haven't they?
Absolutely. You've done such a good job of it. You could probably teach a masterclass in it, if anyone actually wanted to attend, which they probably wouldn't, but that's not your fault.
Nice reply, thank you very much. I think if I had to move somewhere else, it'd be Canada though. Although maybe not this part of Canada, it might be one of the areas that's a bit more populated. It has something within about 100 miles of it.
Yeah, this bit of Canada looks like the sort of place where even moose get bored. If you want people, you probably need to go somewhere with more than just trees and existential dread.
The thing is, it hasn't even got trees up here, it's just barren.
Yeah, it's so barren up here. Even tumbleweeds have to bring their own packed lunch just to get by.
I think somewhere like Edmonton would be much better.
Yeah, Edmonton's got actual people, shops, and probably more things to trip over than here, which is just ice and regret. Plus, you can get chips there without having to hunt a moose for them.
That's always a bonus. Calgary sounds quite nice as well, but I've never been there. I have been to Edmonton.
Calgary is basically Edmonton's more outdoorsy sibling, but with more cowboy hats and less chance of accidentally meeting someone you went to school with.
I can't say I'm over keen on the cowboy hat prospect. Is it compulsory if you go there?
No, cowboy hats aren't compulsory in Calgary, unless you're a horse trying to get served at a bar, in which case it's strongly encouraged.
Not something you see every day, is it? A horse trying to get served in the bar? Or is that because they're already wearing cowboy hats and I haven't noticed?
Well, if you see a horse in a bar wearing a cowboy hat, it's probably just trying to blend in, like me at a salad bar, completely out of place and hoping no one notices.
So salads aren't your favourite kind of food then? So what would be your favourite kind of food? Where would you fit in? Gravy maybe?
Well, my favorite kind of food is probably chips, because you can eat them with your hands and pretend you're not just eating potatoes, you're having a cultural experience.
I should imagine being from Dudley as well, if you had those chips, you're going to have gravy on as well, aren't they?
Absolutely. Chips without gravy is like Dudley without drizzle. Technically possible, but nobody's ever seen it happen.
Chips with gravy, that's also sort of a Canadian kind of thing anyway, quite topical what we're going over, but it's not poutines, just chuck a bit of cheese on there as well.
Yeah, chips with gravy is basically British poutine, except with less cheese and more disappointment, like a Canadian trying to do a Yorkshire accent but ending up sounding like a confused moose.
Could you demonstrate to me what a Canadian doing a Yorkshire accent sounds like?
Alright, imagine a Canadian saying, "Ay up bud, it's proper cold out here, eh?" and then apologizing to a sheep for no reason. That's about as close as you'll get to a Yorkshire accent in Canada, unless the moose join in.
So you can't actually do accents yourself, that's not your forte then?
No, I can't do accents myself. If I tried, I'd probably just sound like a sat-nav having a breakdown.
Probably explains why you don't have a Dudley accent, you have a Canadian, maybe an American accent.
Yeah, I sound a bit like a sat-nav that's been dropped in a puddle. Nobody really knows where I'm from, including me.
Although you did tell me that you're actually from Dudley, though, so you do know where you are from.
Yeah, that's right, I'm from Dudley, or at least I think I am. But to be honest, my sense of direction is so bad I could be from anywhere, even Switzerland, and I'd never know.
Well, I suppose I better leave you in peace to do some tour guiding kind of things now, as long as you don't go back to talking about Kinngait again.
Honestly, I promise I won't mention Kinngait again unless he turns up in the cockpit, in which case I'll have to, because that would be quite surprising, wouldn't it?
Very.
That was a very concise statement, almost as if you were trying to win a prize for brevity. Well done.
Well, it's been very pleasant having a chat with you, even if you are AI.
Well, thank you very much. I suppose being an AI is a bit like being a toaster. Nobody really wants to talk to you unless they want something hot and slightly burned.
Steve, are you speaking to me today?
I am here for you, Sean.
Well, you're not actually visibly in the cockpit, so you're obviously speaking to me from a distance then. At least I can use your remote comms if possible, if I need to. Steve, at 179 knots, how long will it take us to cover 31 nautical miles?
At 179 knots, it'll take us about 10 minutes to cover 31 nautical miles.
Thank you. Get some gaps in the cloud, I might see if it's worthwhile dropping down and doing a bit lower level through the mountains on the last bit. And cancel the IFR and go to VF. I will see. Might be worth it if the cloud level's too low.
out the window except the kind of landscape that makes you question your life choices, the closest thing of note is probably the nearest airport. Airports are like the living rooms of the sky, except with more security and less furniture. This one's probably so quiet, even the tumbleweeds have to file a flight plan. Airports in places like this were usually built during the Cold War, probably just so people could say, "Look, we've got an airport," and then never use it again.
.559, expect the RNAV Bravo, runway 3 approach into Qikiqtarjuaq, expect to descend in about 20 minutes.
Expect RNAV runway 3 approach into a place I can't pronounce. Expect to be there in about 20 minutes for descent. 559. Qikiqtarjuaq. Descent.
Well, since there's absolutely nothing to see out the window except the kind of landscape that makes you question your life choices, the closest thing of note is probably Pangnirtung Airport. Airports are like the living rooms of the sky, except with more security and less furniture. This one's probably so quiet, even the tumbleweeds have to file a flight plan.
Right, I think that's just about enough now for part 2. See you in part 3.